One of the biggest big box retailers is showing major cracks, and it is signs of a recession that no one is talking about, and very few people are neglecting just the health of the consumer. The interesting aspect about all of this is that I've been screaming from the rooftops that the retail consumer is not exactly as healthy as it seems. We've talked ad nauseum about the jobs market and how it seems like there is a bit of fishiness going on in the jobs market, but there's something else that people are missing that I'm going to dive into here today. The first thing we're going to dive into is the big four recession indicators. The real retail sales have fallen by 0.2% in April. Now, you might be asking, okay, that doesn't seem like a major drop off, but consumer spending in the retail sales doesn't usually fall off quite that much. In fact, the real retail trades were down by 0.1% from March 2025 and were up from last year, but the motor vehicle and parts dealers were up and the food and services. But either way, it seems like the major monthly retail sales numbers are drastically falling down off of a cliff. And in fact, we've got the biggest box retailer, Walmart, showing major slowness with their growth. In fact, Walmart is seeing net income decreasing despite a revenue increase. Now, they're blaming this, of course, on the tariffs, how everything is a little bit more expensive. And now they are actually taking a policy shift that they haven't done previously to now increase the cost of all of these goods for the average retail spender. So the retail spender is, in fact, not going and buying just quite as much as you would initially think. And you have to watch out because the retailer are now showing drops. Walmart shares drop as retailer says profit growth will slow. It topped its earnings and revenue estimates for its fourth fiscal quarter, but said that profit growth will slow in the current fiscal year. And still, the retailer's CFO, John David Rainey, said the company wouldn't be immune from looming tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Walmart also saw strong gains in its e-commerce business and membership programs. But if you go and look back, they are also seeing some more issues, right? That was earlier this year. Now, we're keeping it going here on Wally World. What else is going on? Well, Walmart stock has been in a downward spiral, and investors are wondering what's driving the decline. The retail giant reported a 4.1 year-over-year increase in revenue, but its net income dropped to just $5.7 billion to $5.3 billion. This decline was attributed to higher cost of sales and operating expenses, which rose by 3.3 and 6.5% year over year, respectively. So I think that's an interesting aspect here is that, we're looking at overall expenses from a company that really looks at efficiency as a way to then, make all these sales, right? That's essentially what Walmart is built on. Companies like Walmart, Amazon, they've all been looked at trying to build out a company very, very efficiently. So even with that, the CPI numbers that come in at 2.5%, how could they even be correct when the number one most efficient retailer in the country is looking at 3.3% growth on cost of sales, and their operating expenses rose by 6.5%. Something isn't adding up when it comes to that 2.5 that the CPI is reporting here, folks. And I think that a lot of people are starting to feel that. They're starting to feel the pressure. They're starting to feel a little bit of the pain. And, the U.S. producer prices are also something that has fallen here. And, we haven't really seen something be falling like this and have it be expected. The U.S. producer prices fell by 0.5% month over month in April, following a revised flat line reading in March. and defying market expectations of a 0.2% increase, right? So not only did they think that it's going to increase, they also said, hey, it fell 0.5%. Now, when you guys are saying, okay, it's only 0.5%, this is month over month numbers. So this is a decent drastic move, and this is the first decline in producer price index since October 2023 and the steepest drop since April 2020. What happened in April 2020? Well, the cerveza sickness, and it was driven by a 0.7 decrease in service costs. So we're seeing the consumer now essentially have to feel more pain, right? We're seeing the consumer now having to deal with Walmart prices increasing, and we're going to get into that more. But there's definitely issues underneath the hood that, okay, maybe cutting interest rates wouldn't fully solve them, but it would add more liquidity to the market. And more liquidity to the market, well, maybe would help out the consumer a little bit. Jerome Powell thinks that inflation is still not under wraps. So what is he doing? He's keeping this very high. And he's doing it with good purpose, I guess, because inflation isn't really at the 2.5% that we were showing, right? Inflation is probably a little bit closer to what Walmart is having to see and having to deal with, this 3.3 to 6.5. When management pointed to the growing e-commerce sales, which now make up 18% of Walmart's net sales, as a significant contributor to these increasing expenses, which doesn't make too much sense. Because if it's an e-commerce, right, it's a website. Now they got to pay the shipping cost, the delivery cost, those kind of things. But if that's growing by 18%, that's supposed to make things more efficient. So Walmart is missing the boat here on something, but they're seeing their operating cost rise by 3.3 and 6.5% in all of this, right? And so, we're seeing signs of the cracks starting to form. And, I've been reporting on this for a little bit, but the consumer confidence, which is essentially, the job stability, if the consumer were to lose the job, how likely do they feel that they would be able to go get another job, similar pay, et cetera, et cetera. It's fallen to the lowest level in 3 years amid these inflation fears, amid potential recession fears. The University of Michigan closely watched the consumer sentiment decline another 2.7%. So it's the lowest reading again since July 2022. And since January, this sentiment has tumbled nearly 30%, sign that Americans are worried about their economy and their financial prospects. So it's not just talking heads on the internet or on YouTube here saying, all right, watch out for all of these issues. It's more so looking at how these consumers are reacting to the current financial situations. And it's looking like, Walmart, because it's rising prices, consumers are going to have to watch out, because a retailer that's known for doing very drastic moves, and I'll even show you how they've essentially done a backflip on their tactics here, because Walmart now is having to raise prices because of tariffs, right? The 90-day reprieve on Chinese goods that will see their levy reduced from 145 to 30% won't absorb the rising costs it's already seen from suppliers. So as I said, a little bit earlier here today, that we're also seeing producer prices start to unexpectedly fall. So it's really interesting. They're saying producer prices are falling, but we're raising prices because of tariffs. So something ain't adding up here, folks. That's all I'm saying. Something ain't adding up. But either way, Walmart is now essentially noticeable price increases are expected to hit shelves as early as the end of this month, and more price hikes will likely roll out this summer as retailers work through the merchandise they stockpiled when tariffs first floated. But if anybody can weather this storm, it's Walmart. Why? Well, Walmart's always been doing unique ways to deal with issues, right? I mean, not too long ago, Walmart was slashing prices, right? And the narrative around that time was Walmart, while everybody is raising prices, Walmart's going to cut prices so they can build more loyal customer base. Well, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case here because unfortunately, they're having to raise prices. Walmart is still sticking to its expected 3 to 4% sales growth in 2025 as it chalked up wins, attracting more higher income shoppers, a group that will likely stick with them amid all economic uncertainty. And in the most recent fiscal year, roughly 60% of Walmart's revenue came from groceries. So, those are kind of positive numbers that you'd like to see because groceries, everybody's got to eat, right? Don't complain when your plate's full when the main mission was you got to eat, right? But either way, this is resulting in, the dollar floating around this 100 mark, right? It's down about 1% in the past 5 days. But if you look at where we're at comparatively to a few weeks ago when I started checking the Dixie, we're still over 100. So this is a positive sign, but I still think that we have some ways to go. And I think that the overall market is reacting in a way that honestly I kind of anticipated. We see them up 0.7% right now for this final week. We're going to continue to see the market humming along, right? Because Walmart, although they're slowing, they've seen that revenue growth increase. So they just need to either figure out how to get more efficient or figure out how to deal with it. But the e-commerce growth side of things is interesting. And I think that's where all of these companies are going to start to go to. So they need some more of these workers, right, to go buy all these groceries, do those things for these people. But this is going to be a trend that we're going to start to see. And if anybody could survive it, it's Walmart because they emerged from the 2008 financial crisis with an even bigger market share and more brand loyalty by lowering prices on essentials. So that's always been their MO. Hey, in the midst of uncertainty, let's lower prices. Now, they are extremely uncertain, but we'll see where Walmart ends up going from here. Now, if this is your first time here, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Smoke that like Cheech and Chong. Hit the subscribe button with the bell notifications because I'm going to you guys live 4 to 5 times a week to tell you guys all what is going on in the public markets. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that like. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And thank you guys all for tuning in to another great live stream.